Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Chaucer's Books virtual author discussion with Dr. Frauke Bagusche. My name is Michael Takeuchi, and I'm the events coordinator at Chaucer's Books in Santa Barbara, California. We're a 47-year-old independent bookseller founded by our current owner, Mari Curley. To purchase today's book, browse other titles, or check out our upcoming events, please go to our website at chaucersbooks.com. Speaking of our website, you can purchase Santa Barbara's own T.C. Boyle's latest book, Talk to Me, signed exclusively for our store. Also, upcoming events this week include Tuesday, we'll visit with author and artist Jaime Cortez. And then on Thursday, we'll have fire experts Stephen J. Pine and David Carl on Thursday. Both events begin at 7 p.m. While our guest and myself are the only ones seen and heard on this webinar, please feel free to utilize the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. YouTubers, please type in the chat or email me at events@chaucersbooks.com. This event is being simulcasted on and will be recorded for our YouTube channel, and it'll be available upon after program's completion. So let's begin. Tonight, we welcome from Germany, author Dr. Frauke Bagusche. She's the writer of the Greystone books published, The Blue Wonder, Why the Sea Glows, Fish Sing, and Other Astonishing Insights from the Ocean. Having lived near the ocean my whole life and traveled a little bit, I've been able to swim with manta rays and swim and sing with dolphins, seen sharks, whales, and as many fish, Nemo and Nan, in the sea as I could. Yet all these experiences would just seem like a typical week for Dr. Frauke Bagusche. She's a marine biologist, a diver, who with a colleague founded the bluemind.org in 2018. Frauke has also worked as a freelance lecturer and provides training on the subjects of plastic pollution in the oceans, the effects of climate change on marine ecosystems, and the overfishing of the oceans. Please welcome Frauke Bagusche. Hello.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we'll try not to wake up your dog behind you, sleeping behind you too. So
well, he's sleeping sound. I hope it will stay like this because it's a bit loud then.
The Blue Wonder is such a wonderful book as an ocean lover, and I think it has something for everyone. And I just wanted to commend you on a wonderful piece of work.
Oh, thanks so much.
So I have to ask you though, before we talk about the book, is your first experience with the ocean. What do you remember about going to the ocean for the very first time?
Well, I grew up far away from the ocean. It's, I think, like a few hundred kilometers away from the ocean, but my family and I went on holidays when I was quite young, and Mediterranean mostly. And I started to love the ocean so much. And I think then I decided to become a marine biologist. And
Really?
I thought, yeah, really. Years back, on a birthday of my dad, my auntie told me, Frauke, you know that you actually decided to become a marine biologist when you're a fourth grader. And I didn't know that anymore. I mean, I grew up far away from the ocean, but back then I already decided, okay, I will become a marine biologist. And that is quite astonishing because we wouldn't have really TV. We were not allowed to watch TV it was really funny.
Wow. So how did you make this your life's work? I mean, you had a dream in fourth grade.
Oh, now you're back. Sorry.
How did you make this your life's work, though? How did you go about making the oceans your?
Well, you know, I studied biology in Germany in Frankfurt, and I chose a marine topic. And from then on, I worked on different universities across Europe, where I've always chosen marine topics to work on. I did my PhD at the National Oceanography Centre in Southampton in England. There I worked in oysters and the impact of climate change on marine calcifying species, such oysters. And yeah, that was so interesting, but very depressing.
I bet.
Yes. After that, I got a bit tired of academia. So I decided to go and work on the Maldives, where I managed my first marine station. And I thought things will become better while I'm working there, but then I got confronted with another problem, which is the ocean is facing, like marine plastic pollution. And there I started my, fight against it. I started to educate people about the impacts of marine plastic on the fauna. And after that, I went on a research cruise. I mean, it wasn't really a research cruise. It was like an environmental expedition, the Aqua Power expedition. I'll show some pictures later.
Okay.
And there we wanted to visualize the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The North Pacific Garbage Patch. We'll talk about that later too, what exactly that means. And after that, I went back to another island on the Maldives. I think I managed my second station. Then I went back to Germany to found the Blue Mind and then to write my book.
So how did this book come about? How did you decide that you wanted to write a book that's very comprehensive yet compact into a very digestible format?
Thanks. Yeah, well, I give talks all around Germany and also online talks. And that was just a medium for me to reach more people. Because, my intention is when people read my book, I would like to raise love and fascination for the marine life, for marine creatures. And when you love something, you really want to protect it. And that's why I've written that book, because I really want people to treasure the ocean and its marine animals, because, no matter where we live, if you live in California or me right now, far away from the sea, we are 100% dependent, we depend on the ocean, and no matter where we live. And I want people to realize that, but more in a fun way than in a very, very serious educational way.
Well, your passion and your love really shine through in this book. And
thanks.
So I'm gonna go off camera here, and you've got a presentation you want to show us. So
yeah,
take it away.
All right, thanks. Hang on. So, which screen do you see, Michael?
I see the blue, I see the humpback right now.
So the diving humpback, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Okay, we can skip that part. I talked about that. So now I'd like to introduce you a little bit to my recent work with the Blue Mind. So I founded the Blue Mind actually with a colleague of mine, and we are both living inland, far away from the sea. And we both believe that marine conservation has to start inland, because here we produce most CO2 and most plastic, which will, destroy our oceans. And we actually start with a very little human beings. We start in kindergartens, we go into schools, and we have our ocean pop-up lab, our outdoor lab, and we fish for microplastic. Again, I will, talk you through microplastic later a little bit. And so the children are scientists themselves for a day, and they really, really enjoy it. And after that, I get so much good feedback from the parents, from the children, from the teacher, because they are really, really keen to do their bit for cleaner oceans. Also, we dive virtual into the oceans with disabled children. Some of them don't have the possibility to ever enter the ocean. So we show them virtual reality, small films about the ecosystem, about plastic pollution, and they really, really love it. But we talk a lot about plastic pollution. As you can see, that's my favorite topic, really. And I go and talk you through that topic a little bit, and then we will talk about the fun part, because that is otherwise very depressing. Well, we have a lot of plastic in the ocean, and we say it's like almost 13 million tons plastic litter enters the ocean per annum, which is a garbage truck per minute. And this will quadruple by the year 2050. So it will be a huge amount of plastic in our oceans, more plastic pieces than fish. Most of the plastic, the microplastic, we call the big plastic pieces, enters the ocean over the rivers. There are like 10 rivers, which has been identified, and the river, like 8 rivers in Asia, 2 in Africa, which actually transport most of the plastic into the oceans. And the river which transport most of the plastic is the Yangtze River in China. Here it's a picture from the Mekong, which I took in 2018. Once the plastic is in the ocean, it will distribute, and it distributes by oceanic currents. And here you can see in light blue the warm surface currents, and then the water will cool down at the poles, sink down, and continue as the deep sea currents. And you also see like circular currents on that picture here. And this is where the so-called garbage patches accumulate. So the biggest garbage patch is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which has actually the size of, I think, 4.5 times the size of Germany. So it's very, very big. But it's not like an ice shield in the Arctic full of plastic. It's rather like plastic confetti below the ocean surface, and ghost nets. So ghost nets you can find in every ocean, very likely at the coast of California too. For those of you who don't know about ghost nets, I have a short video here. So it's fishing gear which has been abandoned, or which is just get ripped off and carried away. And the problem with these ghost nets, they never stop fishing. They accumulate organic material, so they will look like a natural floating object or like algae patches. And so animals use this as a shelter. They seek, they look for some food there. And that's the reason why so many animals get entangled in these pesky nets. These nets can be as big as a few football fields together. So they are incredibly big. Here's a smaller one. And one day when I was living on the Maldives, this net got caught by our diving crew. And in this net, there were 2 marine sea turtles entangled, which one looked like that. And as you can see, the animals are unable to free themselves. And most of the time they're injured and you have to treat their wounds, or many times the animals just die. Well, for those of you who don't like to see blood, maybe you just should look away right now, because this picture is quite grim. So this animal got entangled in a net, and as you can see, the front flipper is very swollen. And so we decided to bring that turtle into a sea turtle hospital. And they amputated the flipper. And I thought, okay, the turtle lost so much blood, and I never thought it would survive this operation, but it did. And 2 or 3 weeks later, they set her free, which was very, very lucky for that turtle, because so many animals don't have that luck. And on another day, we went on a dolphin cruise. The area I lived in, there were thousands of dolphins living there. It was just so beautiful to see. And I wanted to show these dolphins our guests. However, we went out by boat, and there was a sea turtle at the sea surface, which wouldn't dive. And usually they dive as soon as you approach with the boat. That turtle just couldn't dive because it was entangled in a very small ghost net and in a plastic foil, which you see in the back of the video. And when I'm in the water, I always carry a knife, not because of the sharks, because I dove with sharks every day there, and there were no incidents with sharks, but because of the real dangers in the ocean, the lost fishing gear. And I managed to free that sea turtle. The net was stuck, the head was stuck in the net, the front flippers were stuck there, but the back flipper was entangled really, really deep into that net. So we decided to take her out, and I gave that turtle to our captain and my knife, and he freed the turtle very, very carefully. Usually when we have these animals, we check on them, the health status, if they're if they're very thin or if their wounds are very deep. That turtle wasn't entangled for such a long time, so we set her free. And that turtle was lucky too. She survived and she could dive, and she could, dive for food and escape her predators, which was very nice to see for the guests, but also very shocking because they wouldn't know anything about ghost bats. On another dive, I went on so many dives, and on each of them, I collected so much rubbish. And on one of the days, there was a fishing line floating through the ocean, and I started to take it in. But all of a sudden, it started to move, and there was something stuck at the end of the fishing line, which was like this juvenile eagle ray, and it was really badly entangled. The hook was stuck in its mouth, and I think it took us for 10 minutes or something to free that little animal, and it was really, really hard to hold. And maybe they are stingrays and they have a venomous spine there, and it was just slashing out. And I don't know, it was really hard, but at the end we succeeded. And also this animal got freed, which was absolutely beautiful because this little fella was allowed to live a few days longer. And because I was so shocked by the amount of plastic entering the ocean, we set up the Aqua Power Expedition in 2015. The idea came from Flo Jung, which is a professional windsurf pro. And, there were some other professional windsurfers on our boat, and a captain, environmentalists, and a camera team. And we sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm not a sailor, I must say. I had to go to a sea survivor course before I got really, really seasick. That's why I never did my sailing license. However, so I thought, okay, I'll just try, give my best. And, if I get so seasick I can't work, I'll have to, get off the boat. Anyway, I got seasick all the way long, like 10 weeks long, but I managed to survive, right? And because I really, really wanted to see how these so-called garbage patches looked like. And we lived on a very luxurious catamaran. And we started in Guadeloupe in the French Caribbean. And then we sailed to the Virgin Islands, the Dominican Republic, from there to Bermudas, from the Bermudas to the Azores, and from the Azores back into the Mediterranean Sea. And we tried to take as many samples as possible. And we took samples by dragging a plankton net behind, as you can see here. Plankton net is has a swimming device in front and a collecting device in the back. And, we sampled the surface of the ocean. That's where the microplastic, so tiny plastic particles, accumulate when they don't sink down. And here you see a typical microplastic sample. And no matter where we sampled, even in the Caribbean, in the North Atlantic, in the middle of the garbage patch, in the middle of nowhere, thousands of miles away from the shore, or in the Mediterranean Sea, our net was full of microplastic. And recent research shows that we have microplastic everywhere now, from the Arctic to the Antarctic, from the atmosphere, so we breathe microplastic, to the deep trenches of the ocean. In the deepest part of our ocean, the Mariana Trench, 11,000 meters down below, we find microplastic. We find macroplastic there. It's everywhere. And what shocked me most was we found a lot of microplastic originating from our clothes in the middle of nowhere. So how does it get there? So we buy a lot of material. We buy a lot of clothes, which consists of fibers made of oil, like acryl or polyester, polyethylene. And when we wash them, these fibers get washed away, and the water can't be fully cleaned. So it will flow back into our rivers and into our oceans. And that's why we found so much microplastic from our clothing everywhere in the ocean. But in this sample, you can see here pieces of broken down plastic. We find a lot of fibers from fishing gear in blue here, styrofoam, lots of foil everywhere. And, because it has different densities, different plastic. So you can find it everywhere from the surface, in 100-meter depth and 1,000-meter depths and 11,000-meter depths. So this was really, really shocking for me to realize that right now it's everywhere. And here it looks a bit funny. Here on the left side, you see the water surface. I was off the coast of Bermudas, and we wanted to dive with humpback whales. Humpback whales are they are feeding on plankton, right? And this microplastic, which scientists define as plastic which is smaller than 5 millimeters in diameter. So the natural food, like plankton, mixes with this microplastic, and that's what filter feed is, or animals who feed on plankton eat with their natural food. The problem with plastic is that plastic itself obviously is not really healthy. It contains chemicals which can cause cancer, for example, or disrupt your hormone system. But it also acts like a sponge, and when there are pesticides, for example, in the environment, will accumulate these pesticides. And as soon as an animal ingests this microplastic, these chemicals get released and they can poison these animals. And problem with microplastic, it doesn't stay in the micrometer range. It does get smaller and smaller, so it can enter the cell barriers. And actually, there are new studies showing that they have taken, like, I think from humans, lung, liver, kidney, and another organ I just forgot, sorry. And in every 52 samples they took from living human beings, they found microplastic in their inner organs. So what it does to our health, there are a few studies, and none of them is really positive, as you can tell. Anyway, sorry. Here we went off to dive with humpback whales off the Bermudian coast, and I just, dipped my hand into the water, and it was full of microplastic. That day we were covered in microplastic when we came out of the water. All right, I think that was quite depressing right now, and I'm trying to switch the topic now, to talk a bit about more of the fun stuff. Actually, in my book, we have 7 chapters, and 6 of them are about the wonders, fascination of the oceans, and, it's a lot of fun stuff in there. And the last chapter just talks about microplastic, climate change, and overfishing. So it is not a depressing book. Now, I talked a lot about plankton, and there are species, you may know already, which are feeding on plankton, corals. And coral reefs are just beautiful underwater. They are like mega cities of the oceans. Here it's a coral reef in the Dominican Republic, just very beautiful there. And, it was quite overfished where I dove there. However, corals can have different shapes and forms. And you can see hard corals. I mean, corals are animals. They consist of a tiny animal called coral polyp, and they build an external skeleton. And they look like this, for example. They can have all shapes and forms and colors, and it's just so beautiful if you dive and if you're able to witness this beauty underwater. And of course, we also have soft corals, which can look like this. This was in Vietnam, one of the most stunning soft coral gardens I have ever seen in my life before. And when you've been snorkeling or scuba diving or just swimming in the water, you may have noticed it is not as silent as you would have imagined, because actually it is quite noisy, especially in a coral reef. It's as noisy as a megacity. You can hear. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I like in the book you sorry for interrupting. You call them the rainforests of the sea. I think that's a really wonderful and accurate term about.
That's true, because the biodiversity is so high, so you can compare them to rainforests. So you find so many fish species and other species living there. It's just amazing.
Something about 1% of the sea floor is covered with reefs, but they hold 25% of the species in the open ocean. That's just an amazing ratio.
Yeah, 25 fish species. That's amazing, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
just a small amount of environment, holds so much life. It's just beautiful. And when you dive there, as I said, you can hear lots of sounds. You can hear like chirping, like, humming, and so many sounds. And many of them are actually produced by fish. And I have an entire chapter writing about the songs of fish. And here you can see batfish. And these animals can be quite aggressive when you dive through them. They can chase you, I can tell you. But they also, you have to swim really fast. But they're usually quite funny, and they love your bubbles when you dive there, when you scuba dive and breathe out. And these fish, they have like a monotonous sound, like ba, 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 and you can hear that. And some lionfish roar like lions, and some fish grunt, and it's such a cacophony of sounds underwater. And scientists have found out that actually it's from dusk and dawn, the cacophony of, is that right? Cacophony? Sorry,
yes.
Do you understand me? Sorry. Gets increases at dusk and dawn. So it's like the birds we have on land. So they communicate with each other. They mark their territory, or they attract males or females, like they attract their mates. And it's just so amazing. One of them, actually, who also grunts, is like the little clownfish, like Nemo. when you swim to his, it happened to me quite a few times. When I wanted to go there, I observe the little beautiful animal. But when you come too close to the anemone, they are like guarding dogs. They will, bite your finger and they will grunt. It's crazy. It's really, really funny. They are really cute. And they have a fascinating biology, really. Actually, Finding Nemo, the Disney story.
Yes.
Yeah, for those of you who don't, it's a little clownfish. He was born with a, too small fin, his lucky fin, and he got kidnapped by some scuba divers for like the aquarium trade. So his dad ventures out to get him back. And of course, this entire story has a happy ending. Nemo is a single sunfish because his mother died. I think she got eaten by a barracuda. So they live happily ever after in their anemone, father and son. But, if the writers of Disney would have, told this story biologically correct, it would be rated R18. Is that the right term in English?
R, yeah.
Yeah. Because like clownfish are born as males, actually. And, and when you see a group of clownfish in an anemone, the biggest animals of that group is the reproducing female. And the second biggest fish in that group is a reproducing male. All the others are juveniles. And as soon as the female dies, actually, the second biggest animal at that time, the male, it changes its sex and becomes female. So, and if you would just plot that on Nemo, it would mean that when Nemo's dad would be killed, or when Nemo's mom would be killed, his dad would become his mother and they would mate. So it would be incestuous. So not a story like Disney would tell, right? Well, but to be honest,
it's more like the Kardashians and the Jenners over here.
Yes. Oh, sorry. That's true. Yeah. It's true. So, it's so fascinating what you can find underwater. There's so many fish in the reef which can change sex, and it's completely normal. It's considered absolutely normal, that animals change their sex. But you also can find, like in every mega city or any city in the world or a village, you can find a functioning health system. And I write about this in the chapter called Underwater Hospitals. Here you can see a manta ray on a cleaning station. These underwater hospitals are actually so-called cleaning station, where little cleaning wrasse, as you can see at the belly of the manta ray, there are these little fish, right? These are the cleaning wrasse. And they are cleaning their customers, which are queuing, really. And from parasites, they're cleaning their wounds, and they're such a good customer service. They actually clean sharks, the teeth of the sharks, the gills of the sharks, they clean turtles, they clean all kinds of fish, and they don't get eaten. So it's just beautiful because they get their next meal and their customers get cleaned, and it's so important. And manta rays, for example, come by these cleaning stations a few times a day. And when you are a scuba diver, you can sit there when you know a spot where a cleaning station is. You can sit there and watch them for hours to get cleaned. Of course, not for hours, because you're probably going to die underwater when you don't have any air. Anyway, but it's just beautiful. And here. And here you can see something else here. You just can see beautifully the dot pattern on the belly of that manta ray. That's when scientists can identify the manta rays, because we take pictures from the area between the gills at the belly of a manta ray, and each dot pattern is as individual as our fingerprint. So we can ID the animals underwater, and so we can learn about them, migration patterns, for example. It's just really, really cool science. And there are a lot of citizen science projects. So when you are a scuba diver, when you take a camera with you, and when you see a manta ray, take a picture and have a look at your, local organizations. They may have an ID program where you can contribute, which is pretty cool, actually.
Frauke, describe how big these manta rays are. I mean, they can get 15, 20, 25 feet, can't they?
Yes, they look like flying carpets, but they're not dangerous at all. They are rays, but they're no stingrays. So they are just gentle giants feeding on plankton and, unfortunately, microplastic as well, yes.
They don't seem to be afraid of you at all, though.
Not at all, no, because this manta ray, I think it's a female. She's really, really relaxed. Her frontal lobes are wide open. And, as soon as you don't touch them and you don't harass them, they are relaxed. And as they have to be able to see you. So when you dive with them, don't approach them from the front, because they can't see you and you scare them. They have their eyes on the sides of their heads, right? So approach them slowly from the side. Keep your distance, because, I don't want to be touched by a stranger, as, the manta ray is the same here. Yeah. So it's just an amazing experience.
When you see them from the front, you can see them all the way through too. Their bodies. No,
no, okay. Nothing you want to see, really. You just see the gills, really.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just beautiful. I love them very much, and it's such a great feeling to dive with them, to be able to witness them, and when they are not shy, especially. It's just beautiful. But you can see so much more when you are in the water, especially in coral reefs, but you have to look closely. And then sometimes you can see absolutely astonishing animals, like the clown mantis shrimp, for example. It's really colorful, but it's also very interesting biology. You can see the eyes, like the stalked eyes. We have 3 color receptors in our eyes, so we can see a good color range, right? I think they have 12, and their world must be like an LSD trip. So it's just so colorful, the entire world underwater. It's just absolutely amazing. But it's hard to find them. So look for tiny pebble holes somewhere in the coral reefs, in the ground. They might be there. And when they hunt, they have an amazing strategy. I don't know, their second pair of legs has developed into, I think they're called clubs in English,
Yeah.
And so actually, this is, I think, the fastest, or one of the fastest movements in the entire animal kingdom. So when they want to kill their prey, which may be hard-shelled like other crustacean, you know, they how does it called? They just have a very sudden front movement, and it's like a 22 caliber bullet. It's as fast as this. So you can't see it with your naked eye. You have to put a camera on it, and you have to watch it very, very slow motion. And these animals are absolutely fascinating. And I think people who try to capture them and put them into their aquariums, some of them had really bad experiences because they really smash the walls of the aquarium. They can really destroy an entire aquarium.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just amazing. I know. Yeah, so you can find all kinds of stuff underwater. But when you dive underwater, and when there's a lot of tourism, impact of climate change, fisheries, they can destroy corals. So there's a need to propagate corals. And you can do it with different techniques. Some of them are very, very successful. And in 2018, a friend of mine and I and another scientist, we went to Vietnam, and I taught some colleagues there about marine plastic pollution, and my friend Laura about coral propagation. And this is a technique from an organization called Ocean Quest Global, which is based in Malaysia. It's just a great technique, because here I chose that technique for that project because you do not introduce any foreign objects into the reef. So no cable binders, no metal structures, no ropes. You take what's there. So first, what we do there, we locate a good area for a so-called coral nursery. You know, you have to look for, the light and current and not the impacts of tourism. And when you find the perfect spot, you collect some coral rock, which is dead coral overgrown by algae, which you can see here. And then you collect living coral pieces. We did not break them from living corals. We just, looked for living coral pieces on the ground, which, got which got broken off by wave action, for example. And then we glued them onto that coral rock with, what's the glue called? Super glue, actually. And added some stabilizer. And within seconds, it hardens. So, but you have to water the coral, and then you have to put it back immediately into the water. And it just grows perfectly fine, and you don't introduce any foreign objects into that coral reef. And a month later, the glue was completely dissolved. No harm was done to the coral polyps, and the corals are still growing. It was just beautiful. Here, I'm putting back down the coral rock with our coral baby in that nursery. However, nursery can also look like this, for example. This is actually a successful nursery too, as you can see, is like staghorn corals. It was in Vietnam too. And how can you see a nursery is successful? Of course, you measure the growth of the corals you have propagated, but you also check out the animals, settling there. And here, this is full of life, this coral nursery. So this was a success as well. It's a bit like a monoculture, this coral nursery here, so I wouldn't do that really. However, they were successful. They did a good job there. But here in the Caribbean, this job wasn't done so well. It was a nursery on ropes. And as you can see, this is high maintenance. You have to clean the ropes every week, so they do not overgrow the corals, which they do here. So that was not a really, really successful nursery at all. Anyway, so you have seen different nurseries. I believe in California, you have lots of, I just saw a video about like coral blocks there, which are also very successful. And, you can have different types of nurseries underwater.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's beautiful, isn't it?
So one of the viewers Thomas had a question about how, with all your work and all you've seen with climate change, terrible pollution, and animals caught in these nets, and the coral disappearing, how are you able to stay so positive when you're faced with all these?
I just stopped that quickly so you can see my face maybe better. Hang on. Yeah, right. Well, it's hard at times, I must say. After I finished my PhD with the topic on climate change, I got really depressed. So I just didn't want to hear anything about it. Now I'm depressed too because of the climate change issue, right? But because I work so much with children, I have hope because these children are our next generations and they are willing to make a difference. And, I collect so much rubbish when I work with children every day with them. And they carry their knowledge home and they're forcing their parents to change their habits. I had a call once from a teacher said, "Oh God, Frauke, there was a mother calling me. Her son didn't want to shower anymore because there's that so-called microplastic in the shower gel." And I said, and that is my success. And that is the fuel I'm running on, seeing the children, seeing people changing, breaking their patterns after I gave talks. And I get so much good positive feedback. Of course, I have, my downsides, my down days. But mostly I'm trying to be positive. Otherwise, I have to, stop working and do another job. And I can't. I'm just good at what I'm doing and I'm not good at anything else.
But then there are scenes like, I think you have another slide coming up, bioluminescence, that I think it just makes it all worthwhile if you see something as beautiful as bioluminescence.
Oh yeah.
So if you could show that one, it's just amazing.
Thing. I don't have a picture taken myself, so I took that from the internet, from Unsplash. But this is near you, isn't it?
Yes.
So this is what you can witness. I can't, I don't live by the ocean, but it's like an entire galaxy of stars has been washed on shore. And you can see your footprints while walking on the beach at night. Your footprints are illuminated. When you swim, you can see your arms, your movements in the water. And it's just so beautiful. Here, this bioluminescence is caused by an algae called Noctiluca. That's a chemical reaction where a cold light has been emitted by organisms such as the algae. And it's just so beautiful to see. I wish I could see that more often, but you can. It's when, there's an algae bloom somewhere at the coast and they get washed on shore and then you can witness such things.
Wow, that is amazing. But amongst the other things you see, there's stuff that isn't so bright. And if you can go to your next slide, my whole image of these creatures is just blown now after reading your book.
I'm so sorry. My friends are really mad at me because of this, because, these were their favorite animals, like sea otters, see this beautiful, beautiful button eyes, their fluffy fur. They just look like plush animals, right? Especially when they hold their young, as you can see here in that picture. However, the male sea otters are not as cuddly and beautiful, especially when it comes to mating. The fur of sea otters is the densest fur in animal kingdom. It's really, really soft, but also really slippery, and they mate face to face. So in order not to slide off while mating, the male bite the faces of the females, and sometimes they lose their noses, for example, or they drown, and the males won't stop mating. However, sometimes when there are no females around to mate with, but there are other helpless victims like seal cubs, they actually mate with them until they're dead sometimes. So these fluffy animals are quite monsters, really.
Well, that's kind of scandalous, shocking.
It is, yes. Yes. Oh, that's nature, isn't it?
Yes, that is nature. Well, not as bad as killing. There is prostitution in sea creatures, isn't there?
It is. Oh yes, it is. There's an entire chapter that's called Sex in the Sea, and I come up with a lot of stories. I learned a lot there while writing it. Obviously, I have not been to all these places. This is one of my favorite stories, actually. It's called Sodom and Gomorrah at the South Pole. You can see the beautiful Adelie penguins. They are just so beautiful little creatures. And when it comes to mating, they form pairs, right? And they build their nests, and the nests are made of pebbles, and pebbles are really hard to get down there. So it's like the Bitcoin of the Antarctic. And so when they build the nest, sometimes the females steal the pebbles from the neighboring nest, but this, but they sometimes want to avoid that conflict. So the females are not stupid. They know at the outer margins, no, how's that called? That the outskirts, like of the colony, there are the bachelors living there, and the bachelors are not stupid themselves. So they accumulate little pebbles. And so the females know this. So they waddle to the bachelors, they make their little mating dance. So they offer sexual availability in exchange of a pebble. But sometimes some scientists observed one female, especially, I think, and she actually just danced her little mating dance, but she wouldn't mate. She would just steal the pebble and run off. And like this, she stole like 62 pebbles or something. It's just so hilarious. It's just hilarious. Beautiful animals and really, really clever.
There are a lot of human characteristics in the creatures you observe, aren't they?
It is, and that's what I'm trying to talk about. We are not so different to animals in the sea. They are feeling organisms. They are feeling, they are empathic animals. They have their families too, and that's why I really would like to make a connection from us to them. We are not so different, and they are worth to protect. So this is my favorite quote, really. It's from Barbadiome, because in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will only understand what we are taught. And that's why I work so much with children, because I really would like to, teach them. And so they are willing and to protect their environment, because it's their future, isn't it?
It is indeed. We have just enough time we've got a few questions, if you don't mind, Frauke.
No, sure, go ahead.
Paul wanted to know, what was your most memorable day underwater?
Oh, that's easy. One day I went out for a trip with my snorkeling guests in the Maldives, and I wanted to show them a shipwreck. And all of a sudden, there were bubbles coming out from the deep, and it was like chirping underwater, and it gets louder and louder and louder. All of a sudden, we were surrounded by 300 plus dolphins. They were everywhere. They were just coming back from the open ocean, coming back from the hunts, coming back into the atoll. And it was just amazing. It just wouldn't stop. They were everywhere. It was so beautiful.
Oh my goodness. One of my favorite passages, I don't want you to tell you about it because I want people to read the book, but it is about the pufferfish. And you write so beautifully. Your prose is just wonderful. I just have to add that in there.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. We have a question. Barbara wanted to know about shower gels. Are there other personal care products problematic in the ocean? And she had wondered about styling gel and if that's harmful to the ocean.
I don't know. It depends probably on the gel itself, but you can check this out by downloading an app. It's called Beat the Microbed, and it will point out the chemicals. It will point out if there's microplastic in that cosmetic or product. In Germany, we use different apps, so I'm not quite. Oh, Oscar's away. Can you see?
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure, but if you use, I use a lot of organic cosmetics. They don't have any harmful substances for my skin and also for the environment. So that's what I use exclusively.
Thank you. And then Loli wanted to know, how do you see the future of the oceans? What can individuals do on a day-to-day basis to help reduce microplastics into the oceans? I think that's a great question to end on.
It is, yes. Well, I'm still hopeful, to be honest. I have to be. In terms of climate change, we really need to change the tide quickly. In terms of microplastic, every one of us can avoid products which are heavily wrapped in package. We can avoid products with microplastic, and we also can avoid clothing made of fibers made of based on what's the name, on plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when we wash them, there are some steps you can do. There's a bag called Guppy bag, where I'm not sure if you can purchase it in America though. Where it's like plankton net for the washing machine, where you put all where you just put all your stuff there with acrylic, polyester stuff, and then it will filter out the microplastic, and then you can dispose it in the normal garbage. So, but with the microplastic already in the ocean, there are few attempts which claim they can fish out all the microplastic, which they can't really. I mean, it's really good that they try, but we have to start avoiding plastic first of all, but also with the plastic in the rivers, we have to try and catch them from the rivers. And there are a few initiatives doing that already. But the best thing to do is education and avoidance of plastic products.
Mm-hmm. Well, Frauke, Bagusche, thank you for joining us. It was a wonderful talk, and hopefully we didn't keep you and your dog up too late tonight.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm fine. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for the invite, Mike. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for listening to my speech here about plastic. Sorry, I hope it wasn't too depressing. And for joining us tonight. And it's my tonight, your noon, right? It was just a pleasure to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you. So please purchase The Blue Wonder, Why the Sea Glows, Fish Sing, and Other Astonishing Insights from the Ocean. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and tonight. Gute Nacht.
Gute Nacht.